Okay. Yeah, can you see my screen?
No, sir.
No?
Yeah.
Okay. So yesterday, like we have discussed the concept of library class, and I also have seen the structure of console application.
Yeah.
So I sent you the links yesterday. Have you installed Visual Studio and SQL?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay. Okay. Now, once you install your Visual Studio, so you should be able to see icon like this. Okay. So if you want to work with any console-based application or any type of application, just open your project. Okay. And click on continue without code. Here you'll see icon like new project. Okay, so when it comes to .NET, we have two versions of .NET, like the classic .NET and .NET Core. .NET Core. Okay, we will work on both. Okay. So first we will learn everything in .NET, then we will implement some APIs and entity framework code in .NET Core. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how you can see. These are .NET framework. When you see .NET framework, it is the .NET, the first version of .NET. The core is completely, like a rewrite of .NET framework. Okay, so compared to .NET framework, .NET Core will be working more faster than .NET. Okay, so it will be directly working with the core related things. Okay, so yeah, and it is completely open source, and it is a pure platform independent compared to .NET framework. Okay. First, let's go with our first application, that is console. As I said, if you're really good in console, you could also develop your own technology like Java and .NET. So that is the power of this. Okay, so we are going to learn all C# concepts using console-based application. So select your first application type as console, then click on next. Here you can see the configuration of your project. So you need to provide the project name, okay, based on your client requirement. Okay, let's say we are developing an application for SBI. Let's say give it as SBI. And where do you want to store it? Okay, just click on this, browse and map it to your local folder. And solution name, by default, your project name will be considered as solution name. Place solution and project in the same directory.
Sir, I guess your screen is not moving. It got stuck. Or you are on the same Excel sheet.
Excel sheet?
I'm sorry, in the same PowerPoint slide, slide number 14, or your
like your network might be slow. I opened Visual Studio.
Yeah, I am understanding from what you're saying, but the slide, but the screen
Can you
is stuck.
Let me reshare it again.
Okay.
Stop.
Or I'll join. Yeah.
I can maybe network issue at your end. Okay. Anyway, let me reshare it again.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, sir. Now it's good. Yeah.
Okay. So when you select a new application, console.NET, okay? Console app.NET framework. Click on next. So this is a configuration window where you need to configure your project. Like you need to provide the project name and where do you want to store it and which version of that framework has to be used. Because the revolution has been started in 2002. The first version of .NET framework, that is that was 1.0, has been introduced in 2002, in the year of 2002. Okay. So you can see all frameworks from here. So when it comes to this newer version, like Visual Studio 2009 and 2019, 2020, 2022, so it has targeted the latest versions of .NET framework. Okay, so if you want to work with older versions, as I said, Microsoft has resolved the COM problem. Not only one version, you can install multiple versions of same project. Here I can see in my system, you can see Visual Studio 2022, Visual Studio 2029, Visual Studio 2017. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so you can maintain multiple versions of same product. The COM problem has been resolved. Because when it comes to real time, right? So sometimes, like you need to support the existing projects in the older version. And at the same time, you may need to develop new projects under newer version, latest version of .NET, right? So in that case, you should be able to maintain multiple versions of same project. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why now you can see multiple versions of Visual Studio in my single operating system. Okay. So now provide project name based on your requirement. And where do you want to store it? Just browse and map it to your local folder. And here we have a concept called solution file. We have two files, project file and solution file. Okay. So solution is like a container for a group of projects. For example, let's say for the same client, we need to implement different types of applications. I need to implement one requirement in console and one requirement in web and one requirement in service, right? Since these three projects belongs to the same clients, every project will have its own project file. Every project will have its own project file. If it is a C#, the extension of the project file is going to be .cs proj, CS. If it is VB.NET, it is going to be .VB proj, like that. Okay, so do remember that every project will have its own project file. And what is the difference between solution file and project file? So when you want to group set of projects, okay, into a single container, then we need
it comes under solution file.
A solution file. Okay. It will just act as a container for group of projects. Where it's like an umbrella where you can group set of projects. Okay. Right. Now click on create. So you place solution and project file in the same directory. So we usually place the solution file and project files in the same directory, because if you want to open any project, you don't have to click on that specific project. If I click on solution file, it will open all the projects at a time. That's why we usually keep both in a same folder, directory in the sense, same folder. If you want to keep them in a different folder, just browse and map it. That's it. So, as I said, every console application by default, it will be provided with a standard structure where you will see a default namespace. The name of the namespace is going to be your project name. If you want, you can change it. But by default, your project name will be considered as your namespace name.
Okay.
Within this namespace, you can place a number of classes. By default, it comes with a class called program. And within this class, you can place a number of methods. By default, it comes with a single method called main, which is nothing but starting point of your application. Okay. And what are these? Using system.collection, system.data. These are all base class libraries, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday we have discussed about this, right? We have discussed about few base class libraries, right? int16, int32, and input and output statements like console class, read, write, right? So in order to use read and write, right?
You need to use
every time you have to provide a complete reference like system.console.read, system.console.write, system.system.system. Every time you would write system.system.system, right? So if this method is going to be used multiple times in your project environment, do not write this system.system every time. It will increase the complexity. Rather, get this namespace imported into your programming environment. Something like this, right? You're using system. How to import this? You have to use a keyword called using. Using is nothing but import. You're telling the system, hey, import this base class library. Okay. Once this gets imported, now you don't have to write system every time. you can skip writing system dot. You can write just console.read, console.write. Are you getting me?
Yeah, okay, sir.
Okay. So that is the purpose of importing your base class libraries into programming environment. And this should be the first one in your programming environment. So whatever is going to be used in your program, only import only those corresponding libraries. Do not import unnecessary stuff, because that would also keep some burden on the system. Whatever is really required, right? For example, if you're not going to work on, by default, the Microsoft system is doing on behalf of you. By default, it will add these libraries to your program. If it is not required, just delete them. Because see, if I'm not going to use all those, there's no point of adding all those, right? It will also
Yeah.
keep some burden on the system. Whenever your project is loaded, it should also load all these libraries into the main memory, right? So whatever is really required, just put only this. And as I said, it supports IntelliSense. This is called IntelliSense, right? Like your Google text box. You don't have to remember any keywords.
Yeah.
Okay. In my case, as of now, I need only one base class library that is going to be system. Now what it do? So whenever you run your project, it loads only system base class library into your runtime environment, right? If I keep other stuff also, what happens? It takes some time to load the system, these system DLL different, right? If I put 10 using 10 different DLLs, it has to load all those DLLs into your runtime environment, right? So the loading itself will consume a lot of time, right? So we should not keep unnecessary burden on the system. So whatever is really required to work with your programming environment, get only those DLLs loaded into your runtime environment. Okay. Okay. So we already discussed about this structure yesterday. Now I'll show you what is actually there. I turn it this. On the right side, here you will see Solution Explorer. Solution Explorer. So this is your solution file, right? Now we added a console application under this solution. As I said, every project will have its own project file. So this is the project file, right? It stays under solution. So now you can add any number of projects under this solution. See, add new project, existing website, right? It acts as a container. It's like an umbrella. Under this umbrella, you can add n number of projects, right? So what is the advantage of this? Rather than whenever you want to open all these projects, right? If you do not keep them under solution file, you have to click on each and every project file. And those will be opened in separate windows, right?
Okay, sir.
If you want all the projects are to be opened in a single click, and all the projects
We
are to
need
be
to have a
opened
solution
in a
file.
single window, just add them to a solution.
Solution
If
file.
you just click on solution, whatever is attached with the solution, linked with the solution, all those projects will be opened automatically in a single window, where you can see all projects at one place. Okay, that's why usually in the real time we keep every project under solution file, and this is the project file. See, if I click on this, edit, right? So these are the properties of my project file. Okay, it comes with different set of properties: runtime properties, compile time properties. Okay, later we will see about this. Okay, this is my project file and this is my solution file. If I go there, open folder in File Explorer, see what is this? Project file. What is the extension of this? .cs project. What is this? This is my solution file. What is the extension of this? SLN. Okay. Within a single SLN, you can keep a number of .cs projects. Okay. Okay. Now, what are these? What is app.config? And what is there under reference? And what is there under properties? What is there under program CS? So we have already seen what is there under program.cs. So this is the structure of console application, right? just to provide the default structure. By default, one class file will be added to your project that is called as program.cs. This is the one which is going to have the starting point of your application. Because as I said, sorry, every project should contain its own starting point. In our case, it is going to be a main program, right? So to provide that starting point, we have to provide a default class. To provide the default class, you have to provide a default namespace. To provide this entire structure, you have to add a default class that is called program.cs. So every console application will be provided with a default class that is called program.cs.
Okay.
Any questions so far?
No,
And
sir.
apart from this,
Clear.
you can add n number of classes to your project. Okay, later we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Okay, right click on this. You can add n number of classes, n number of things, n number of things. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Next, app.config. What is app.config? App means application. Application configuration file. If there is any configuration parameters related to your application, right? If something has to be taken dynamically at runtime, I don't want to hard code anything within my programming environment, because if something is hard coded, it is going to be constant forever, right? Rather, I don't want to hard code anything. For example, here I hard coded the rate of interest as 12.5. Do you think this is going to be constant forever throughout the lifetime? No. The rate of interest for your private personal loans and home loans will get changed every year, right? So if I hard code this value within my programming environment, so what happens whenever it gets changed? If I make any change in the .cs file, this entire project has to be recompiled. Entire project has to be recompiled, right? But if you think that this is not going to be constant, this may get changed after some time, then do not keep here. Rather, keep it in your configuration file. Read me. You can add a number of things. Later we'll see. You can add a number of things here. Are you getting me? Okay. So if I keep something here, and in the future, right now, I kept it as 12.5 in the configuration file. If this gets changed in the future, for example, app settings, means application settings, I'm adding a variable, add key is equal to rate of interest. Later we will see more about this. Okay. This is just high level. Value is equal to 12.5. Right? If I make any change in the app.config, I don't have to recompile my application. That is the difference. In the future, it got changed to 13.5. Yes, you can just go and change it. You just need to save it. That's it. You don't have to
Okay.
recompile your entire application.
Whenever we use the ROI in the code, what we write, if we change it here, it
Correct.
gets
We just
reflected
access only
everywhere.
ROI.
Okay. Yeah.
So we get it from configuration file.
Okay.
Right? If I hard code it here, what happens? Whenever it gets changed, I should go to my code and make the change. So
it reads
just that
the
is the
same
difference.
value. Yeah.
If I make
Okay.
any change in the C# file, the entire application has to be recompiled. That is more expensive. But if I
Okay.
change anything here, you just need to save it. You don't have to recompile it. Every developer should know about this. That's why we use configuration files in the real-time environment. According to the good standards, coding standards, you should not hard code anything within your coding environment. That is really
Okay.
bad practice.
Okay.
Okay. If some value has to be, some constant value has to be taken, better keep them in the configuration files outside of your C# environment. What happens in the future? If you make any change that doesn't impact your project, you don't have to recompile your project. You just need to make the change and save it. Right? So later we'll see more about this. Okay. When we discuss some real-time examples, that time you'll get to know more about your configuration file use. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the purpose of having a configuration file. Next, references. What is a reference? So here I am using these many DLLs, right? Right? Not only these many. So based on my real-time requirement, I may need to import lot many more number of DLLs into my programming environment. Right? Now, in order to make use of these DLLs, okay, so you have to add those references under reference folder. Microsoft has already added on behalf of you. Microsoft has added only few.
Okay.
Right? This may not be enough. You may need to work with some other DLLs also. Okay. So whenever you want to use any DLL, that reference has to be added here. Just right click on this. So you can add that reference from NuGet package always as well as Microsoft.NET Store. You can add those references from NuGet packages, NuGet package store, as well as Microsoft.NET Store. Okay, later we'll see this. So it contains all references of all DLLs that are being used by your applications. Next, properties. What is this assembly info? What is meant by assembly? A library is also called as assembly. A library is also called as assembly. For example, when you design a game, right? You'll be giving some one shots like 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. Right? Initially, we do give 1.0 to our initial version of your game. And when you had some enhancement, make some changes and release the next version. What has to be done? The number is going to be changed. Right? And where do I keep that information? That kind of information should be there in your assembly info. Here you can see what is the title, what is the copyright information, okay, and what is the product name, and what is the version number. You can add everything here. See, my initial version is 1.0.0, file version is 0.0, and in the future, if I add some enhancements to this and release one more version, I can change it to 2.0 or 3.0, 4.0. So the copyright, product, and versioning information related to your product should be available under assembly info. When you publish your product, this will be published automatically along with your product. Okay. It contains the versioning information, copyright information of your application, product, software. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Now you are aware of the complete structure of your console application, right? Properties, reference, configuration file, and the default file provided with your console application, right? Now we will start writing the programs. Okay. Okay. Now what exactly is required to write the program? We have discussed till this yesterday, right?
Yes, sir.
As I said, whenever you want to do something, first you have to define a variable. Whenever you want to hold some data within your programming environment, within your process, how do I hold my data? If you want to hold anything during your process, that has to be stored into a variable.
Yes.
One location has to be created in the memory, and you have to hold it using that location. How do I create a location in the memory? That can be done through your variable declaration. Whenever I say int a or var a, what happens? System immediately it will go to the memory, creates a location with that name, and assigns some memory based on your data type. And within that, you can hold that much amount of data, and that data can be used by your process, right? So in order to do that, first you need to know how to define a variable in C# programming environment. Okay. So if you look into that, so as I said, when it comes to programming languages, it has defined set of standards. If you want to write anything, you have to follow the standards defined by the programming language. If you want to define a variable, yes, we have a specific standard defined by the C#. If you want to write your own class, yes, we have a specific standard defined by the C# system. Okay, so we need to follow those standards. Those are called as syntaxes. So if you're going to write something, you have to follow a standard syntax defined by the programming language. Let's see how to define a variable. So when it comes to variable declaration, right, it contains three parts. What are those? Access specifier, data type, variable name is equal to value. If you are aware of all these parts, yes, you can start defining your variable. Okay. If you look into this, yes, we know the data type, right? Like int, character, float. What is the role of your data type? So based on your requirement, it tells the system like how much amount of memory has to be allocated. If you define it as int, it allocates only 2 bytes. If you define it as char, it allocates only byte. So based on your requirement, it will go ahead and allocate only that much amount of memory. Okay, we are aware of this. And what is the variable name? It's a user defined one. You can give any name. Even you can give your name also, like A, B, C, blah, blah. Yes. And what is the value? Value can be anything, like 10, 20, 30, 40, your name, right? Okay. Out of 4, we are aware of 3 parts: data type, variable, and value. And what about this access specifier? See, if you are going to store something in your memory, you should be really very careful about the security and hackers, right? For example, when it comes to banking application, you'll be holding more sensitive data like SSN, balance details, and this kind of stuff, right? We are not supposed to disclose the account details of one customer to another customer or others. There you may need to implement more complex security levels. How do I add security to my data? How do I protect my data from others? So whenever you want to provide some security to your data, when you want to implement some security levels around your data, when you want to protect it from others, that can be possible through a special concept called access specifiers. Access specifier. It will define scope of your data. It will tell the system who can access it, who can see it. Are you getting me?
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
so if
sir.
you're aware of access specifier, yes, now you can go ahead and start defining your variables. Okay. Let's see. Let's get into the concept called access specifiers. It is very simple. Okay. See, as a developer, you should not go by the theory. If you are learning something, try to correlate everything with the real-time things.
Okay.
Then only you will become more successful. Okay. Do not learn theory as theory. Okay. If I'm saying something, if you're listening something, try to correlate it with the real-time things. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Access specifier. As I said, whenever you want to define some security levels around your data, okay, when you want to tell the system who can see your data, that can be possible through access specifier. Now let's see how many different types of access specifiers are available and how that can be implemented in C#. Okay, if you look into that, the first one is going to be private. First, let me explain my requirement. Forget about the names. Okay, let's say I have 2 assemblies, assembly 1, assembly 2. What is assembly? Don't get confused. A library.
Okay.
Okay, a library can also be called as assembly.
Called as assembly. Yes. Sir.
Okay. Okay. This is my assembly and this is third-party assembly. Okay. This is my assembly. This is third-party assembly. Okay. And within my assembly, I am going to define set of classes. Class C1, C2, C3. In C1, I'm going to define a variable called SSN, which is going to hold the SSN information of a customer. According to the standards, right? According to the requirement, this SSN should be accessible only within my class. Those C2 and C3 are from my same assembly, but still SSN should not be accessible to other classes within my assembly. I would like to
Okay.
restrict the access level up to my class only. Within my class, anyone can access my data. But once it comes outside of my class, nobody should be allowed to access my data. I'd like to restrict that access level up to class level. Though they are from the same assembly, within the same assembly, there can be a number of classes, a number of structures. If someone try to access my data, no, you should not be allowed to access my data. It should be restricted, right? So
Okay.
when your data has to be available within the class, within the same class, when you want to restrict that access level up to your class, then it should be defined as private. When you define any data member or any member function, right? Not only data, right? For example, I've written some valuable code, some reusable, I've developed a reusable component. Component in the sense, a class itself is called as a component. A method itself
Okay.
is called as a component. What is a component? I written a reusable method. Yes, we can call it as a component. I've written a reusable class, which contains a lot of reusable functionalities. Yes, a class itself is called as a component, right? Let's say you have developed a
Okay.
component, right? Now you wanted to sell it to third party. If they steal your code, if there is no secret for your code data, and if there is no secret for your code, someone can easily hack your code, right? I can steal
Yeah.
your code and add my own things, and I can sell it to third party, right? So not only to data, you should also provide security to your components.
Okay.
Are you with me? Okay. So when you want,
Okay.
when you want to implement access levels around your data members, member functions, and classes, then we require access specifier. So once you define any data member as private, the scope of the data member will be restricted up to class level. So within the same class, anyone can access your data. But if any outside class wants to access your data, they cannot access it. They can't even see it.
Okay.
Okay. So that is the purpose of private. Okay. Next,
Yes, sir.
second requirement. Let's go by the requirement. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Second requirement. Let's say this is the banking environment. Okay.
Okay.
One second. Okay. Let's say this is one of the banking sector. Okay. Let us consider this assembly as banking sector. Okay. Now you'll find 100 different banks in the market. Let's say this is SBI, RBI, SDFC, and there are other banks like IDBI, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. Okay.
Okay.
In India, all banks will be controlled by a master bank called RBI. You know that?
Yes.
In
Yeah,
India,
yeah.
all banks will be controlled by a master bank called RBI. Right?
Okay.
SBI doesn't need to send anything to SDFC. SBI doesn't need to send anything to Merrill Lynch or Bank of America. But they should be answerable to RBI.
Okay.
See,
Yeah.
in India, there is a role provided by the RBI. If the transaction amount gets exceeded 49,999, that transaction details should be accessible to the RBI.
Okay.
Right? For example, SBI, they doesn't need to provide any information about the transaction to SDFC or other banks. They're also like him. But they should make it accessible to the master bank called RBI.
Yeah.
In this case, right? If I keep something here, it should be accessible to, it is more sensitive information. I should not share it with SDFC. You're not supposed to share it with SDFC. But if that it gets exceeded a particular limit, we should make it available to RBI. Are you with me? In this case, my data should be accessible to only my class, but sometimes it should also be accessible to my relative, right? You have some relation established between RBI. You are being controlled by RBI, right? So you are being controlled by RBI. It will become your relative, your friend, right? Now, if I keep something here, it should be accessible to my class, my bank, as well as my relative bank called RBI. Are you with me? If that gets exceeded 40,000 rupees, it should also be available to RBI. In this case, my data should be accessible within my class as well as one of my relative class, not to all. It should not be available to SDFC. It should not be accessible to others. It should be accessible to only my relative called RBI. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in this case, you need to extend the access level up to your relative, right? Only your relative has to be allowed to access your data. So when you want to make anything accessible to your class as well as your relative class, when you want to extend the scope of your data up to your relative class, then we require another access specifier called protected.
Protect. Okay.
What is the nature of protected? The data will be accessible to your class as well as your relative classes. You will decide who can see it, who can access it, who can view my data, right? So once the relation gets established, yes, all your relative classes could also access your data. But SDFC wants to? No, he can't even see it. So if I define anything as protected, my class as well as my relative class can access it, but others cannot access my data. So yeah, this extends access level to your relative class. It extends access to your relative level. That is the nature of protected. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next, let's go with third requirement. Let us feel this assembly as a ICICI bank. Let us consider this assembly as ICICI bank group. Within banking group, you can take any bank. Internally, you'll find different sectors, right? Like banking sector, personal loans, home loans, credit cards. Let us consider each sector as one class. Banking is one class. Personal loans is sector one class. Home loans is one class. Credit cards is one class. Debit cards is another class. Okay.
Okay.
So if I keep something here, these are all my relatives only, right? Personal loans, all this belongs to the same group. All this belongs to the same group. SDFC. Here also we will have different classes, right? Here also we will have banking sector, loan sector, and other stuff.
Okay.
Right? SD bank would also have this. Banking will be there. Okay. SDFC will also have banking sector, personal loans, and home loans. Okay. See, have you ever observed, like, if you have taken account in some bank, after some time, you'll be getting calls from personal loans and home loans department of that same bank. Why?
Yeah.
Because all this belongs to same group. If I keep something here in this database, that information will also be shared with other departments of same group, like personal loans and home loans. Are you with me? So within ICICI group, we have different sectors. Let us consider each sector as one class. If I place something here in banking, it should be available to all sectors of my group. Basically, if I keep something here, it should be available to all sectors within my assembly. In the previous case, we have extended the access level up to only relative. Though he is in the same assembly, but still, for example, SDFC is also in the same group, same sector, but still, he should not be allowed to access my data. Whoever is having relation with me, only they should be allowed to access my data. In the previous case, we have extended this access level up to only relative level. Even within the same assembly, others cannot see your data.
Yeah.
But here, I'd like to extend this scope access level up to assembly level. Within my assembly, within my group, anyone can access my data, but someone from outside, if someone from SDFC wants to access my data, he should not be allowed. Are you to me? This is my assembly, my group. SDFC is another group, another assembly, right? So I'd like to extend the scope up to my assembly level. From my assembly, anyone can see my data. But if someone wants to see my data from other assembly, he should not be allowed. So when the scope has to be extended up to assembly level, then it should be defined as internal. Internal. Once you define anything as internal, the scope will be extended up to your assembly level. It means within your DLL, anyone can access your data. But if someone from third party wants to access it, they cannot access it. Any questions?
No, sir. Actually, now the ICICI Bank, whatever you're saying, it is a namespace.
Correct. It is a DLL,
right?
kind of assembly.
Yeah. Under the namespace, we have different classes.
Correct, exactly.
And we can have different like n number of namespaces in a code
Classes.
what we are writing.
This is a namespace. Assembly. Your assembly in the sense, it is your library. It is a namespace. Within this
namespace,
you can have a number of classes, right?
Okay.
So if I keep something in my class, I want that should be accessible to all classes within my assembly, within my namespace.
Oh, okay, sir, I understand.
Okay. So then it should be defined as internal.
Okay.
And next one is going to be, let's say this is ICICI Bank group and this is RBI group. RBI will also have same operations. They will have banking, they will have personal loans, they will have home loans, they will have other departments, right? Let us assume that, yeah, this is ICICI group, this is our assembly, and this is RBI group, this is RBI group. Within RBI, there are different sectors. But according to RBI rules, if the transaction amount gets exceeded 40,000, it should be accessible to RBI, but not all departments of RBI. Within RBI, we have different departments. It should be accessible to only banking department of RBI.
Yeah.
Are you getting me? So what is my requirement here? I want my data should be accessible to all classes within my assembly, as well as only one department from third party assembly, because I have relation with RBI. If SDFC wants to access it, no, it should not be allowed. If Bank of America wants to access it, no, it should not be allowed. I'd like to extend my access level up to only the particular class, particular department of RBI.
Okay.
Okay, because I is my relative. This department is my relative. I don't want to make it accessible to others of RBI. Are you with me? So whenever the scope has to be extended up to your third party relative level, a relative from third party assembly.
Yeah.
Okay. In this case, it should be defined as protected internal. It means protected plus internal. Protected means your relative. Internal means your assembly level. Okay. Right? This will have the nature of internal plus protected. It means all members for your assembly can access your data, as well as only relative from your third party. Only your relative from third party can access your data. This is called protected internal.
Okay.
This extends access to third party relative level. Okay. And next and last one is going to be public. Public. irrespective of the assemblies. If I keep something, it should be accessible to everyone, whether it's from my assembly, third party assembly, it can be from anywhere. If I define something as public, it will be visible to everyone. Anyone can access. Then why should I make it accessible to everyone? What is the need to the real time? Right?
Yeah.
Anyone can steal it, right? If it is visible to everyone, irrespective of the things. So there are some scenarios which are to be made public. I'll give you a simple example. Advertisement data. Right? I'm going to keep some advertisement data in one of the variable. There is no point of restricting the advertisement data. Right?
Yeah.
It should be visible to everyone. It should be visible to as many as people that you can. Are you to me? You have to make it accessible to everyone. You have to keep on increasing the impressions. Right? When it comes to advertisement data, you should not restrict. There is no point of restricting it, right? The purpose is we are advertising. We should increase the number of impressions, as many as you can.
Yeah.
Right? So there are certain scenarios which are to be made public. Right? So once I'll recap it. So whenever you want to restrict the scope up to your class level, it should be defined as private. If that is defined as private, except your class, no one can access it. And when the scope has to be extended up to your relative level, it should be defined as
protected.
Within the same assembly.
Yeah, within the same assembly.
If the scope has to be extended
up to every class in the same assembly, it's internal. And the protected internal is the thing where every class
everyone
of the
from
assembly
your
gets
group
the
as
access
well as only relative from third party group.
And a relative, yeah. And public is where
irrespective of things, anyone can access it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you got the clear picture of need of access specifiers, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Now let's start defining your variable. Right? Now we know how to define the scope. Now we know how to define the data type. Now you know how to define the name as value, right? Okay. Access specifier. Now I'm going to store SSN data. I don't want to expose it to anyone. Define it as private. Data type. Okay, I'm going to store a number. It should be either int 16, int 32, or int 64, right?
Yeah.
So int 16. Next, name. This is user defined one. Variable name, user defined one. User can give any name. SSN is equal to value. Give the value. Value is optional. If you want to provide this value at the time of declaration, you can provide. Otherwise, you can also leave it blank, something like this.
Yeah, we can read it.
In C#, every statement has to be ended with semicolon. Okay, semicolon will define the end of the statement. It will be used by the compiler. Once it sees a semicolon, compiler will think that, oh, the statement has ended. Now I need to go to next statement. Okay. Okay. Next. Int 16. Actually, in integer, we have only 3 data types, right? Int 16, int 32, int 64. But still, I can define it as int. Why? In all older languages, we used to write int, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's why they provided this. You see, C# is more user-friendly language. Okay. So you can also define it as int. Technically, there is no data type called int. We have only int 16, int 32, int 64. So they provide a kind of wrapper. Still, you can define it as int. Once you define it as int, by default, it will be pointed to int 32. This is a very important question. What is the equivalent data type of int 16? Int.
Int. It is int 32. Okay.
Right? If you write it as int, by default, it will be pointed to int 32. Okay. Next, I'm going to define my name. It should be accessible to everyone or some advertisement data. So I defined as public. Data type is string. Name is equal to Prakash. Right? Now we are aware of the variable declaration. Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Now you know everything to start working with your C# programming. But there is only the last concept, right? There is going to be operators. Operators. Okay? Because you need to, sometimes you may need to perform some calculations. Okay, especially in analytical systems. Okay. Let's discuss some high-level operators. The first one is going to be arithmetic operations. Whenever you want to perform some basic arithmetic operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, you have to make use of arithmetic operators. Okay. If you look into this, these are going to be plus, minus, star, hash, and percentile symbol called modulus.
Okay.
Plus, this is for addition. Let's say if A is equal to B is equal to 3. If I write something like A plus B, okay. So this each operator is nothing but a command in C#. Command, system command. If I use plus, okay, it will think that, oh, I have to add these two numbers. It will just go ahead and add those numbers and give you the result. For subtraction, we have to use this minus. For multiplication, we have to use star. And in 4 arithmetic operations, addition will give you only one result. Subtraction would also give you a single result. Multiplication would also give you a single result. But when it comes to division, you will be getting 2 different results. Those are going to be quotient and a remainder.
Okay.
Right? So if you are looking for a quotient, use slash. If you are looking for a remainder, use percentile symbol. Is called as modulus. We call it as modulus.
Yeah.
Okay, for example, here A is equal to 5, B is equal to. If I use slash A by B, 2 2s are 4. So I'll be getting the quotient 2.
Yeah. Okay.
If I use modulus, I'll be getting remainder. For example, you need to find out whether the given number is even or odd.
Yeah, if the remainder is 1, it's odd.
Writing the logic is pretty simple, man. Whenever you want to see what is the project product application software, automation of a simple requirement. Automation of a simple requirement is called a system, software, product, project. Right? So whenever you want to design something, when you want to automate something, right? First, you have to think about a manual process. How do you do it manually? How do you do it manually? Just put those steps on the paper. For example, if I'm asking you to find out whether that number is even or not, how do you do it?
If
take the paper first. You have to ask me to give the number. If I do not give the number, how do you find out whether it is even or not? That doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. First, I have to take the number from the other person. Okay. Number is provided. What will you do? You'll write that number somewhere. It means you are storing that somewhere. Then, how do you decide whether it is even or not? Divide that number with 2. Then check its remainder. If remainder is equal to 0, I should tell him like, hey, it is even. Otherwise, I should tell him like it is odd. This is a manual process. If you want system to do it, you should tell the system how to do it. How do you tell it? Whatever you are doing manually, the same process has to be provided to the system. The same manual process has to be converted into the system language. That's all. If you follow this logic, you can write any kind of thing. Whenever you need to implement something, just step back and think about your manual process. If I need to do it manually, how do I do it? Put those steps on the paper. That is called algorithm.
Yes.
Ready me?
Yes, sir.
What is algorithm? A series of steps designed to achieve a specific operation, designed to automate a specific requirement. It's called algorithm. And the graphical representation of that algorithm is called as a flowchart. Ready? See, That is what you need to follow. Every developer need to follow. Simple. Whenever you are working on any real-time requirement, right? You should always think about the manual process. If I need to do it manually, how do I do it? Take the paper, write the steps. That's it. Just convert those steps into system language. That's it. Here, what do you have to do? If you need to identify whether it is a even or not, first, you would ask the user to provide the number. Right? It means you would get something from the number. In system language, you would use printf and scanf to read that value. Once you get that, what has to be done? Here you are writing on the paper. Here, your paper is nothing but your memory. Right? You're writing it somewhere. You're putting it somewhere. Here your paper is nothing but your memory location. In system, you have to define a variable and keep it inside that. Next, now you have to decide. You got the number. Now you have to decide where it is even or odd. How to do it? In manual process, we are dividing that with 2, checking its remainder, not quotient. Now you have to decide. Oh, here I am looking for a remainder. What has to be used? Slash or modulus?
Modulus.
Right? You will do something like a modulus 2. I will get the remainder. Now check its remainder. Are you getting me? If remainder is equal to 1, print it as even. Otherwise, print it as odd. That's all. Okay. Okay. Later we'll see about it. You'll get a chance to work with so many real-time examples. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Next, these are some high-level and commonly used operators. Relational operators. When you want to know the relation between two values, you would use relational operators. They're going to be less than, greater than, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, is equal to, comparison operator, is equal to, not equal. Okay. For example, here A is equal to B is equal to 5. If I say A is less than B, here we are trying to define the relation between these two. It means we're trying to know whether A is bigger or B is bigger. Right? So in the system, what it will do finally, it is going to return a Boolean value, true or false. If this condition gets satisfied, it returns true. No. Otherwise, it returns false. True means, oh, A is really greater than B. Here A is really less than B. If A is really less than B, it returns true, otherwise false. Same thing. If A is really greater than B, returns true, otherwise false. Same thing. A is less than or equal to B, greater than or equal to, is equal to. We are trying to know whether A is really equivalent to B, A is not equivalent to B. Okay? This is something about your relational operators.
Hello.
Yeah, 1 minute, Dantu.